Hi, I'm Mrs. McGregory. I'm one of the reading specialists at Prairie View. I'm reading Chapter 9. Who do we have here? Trub asks. I notice his eyes gleam along with his gold tooth whenever he smiles. Oh, this is my friend Vilk and his sister Kavita. Trub shakes both of their hands and then points to the bench and says, Why don't we sit down? I can think on my feet, but we can make a better plan if we put our heads together. I sit down first. Trub sits with one side of me and Vic sits on the other. Kavita holds Ma's purse on her lap and sits as far away on the other end of the bench. I notice she leaves a lot of space between herself and her brother. So, Trub says, as he rubs his hands together, what can I do for you, Jax? I know it's rude to stare, but I can't stop looking at Trub's bushy eyebrows. The gray and white hairs far outnumber the black ones. But there's no denying that his eyebrows look a lot like mine. I want to ask him how we're related, but first, I need to answer his question. Ambrose said you could navigate between dimensions. Ma tried to do it, but something went wrong with her transporter. I point to the guardhouse and behind us, and Trub nods like he understands. What's a transporter? Says Cavi. But Vilks shushes her sister. Mind your business, Cavi. She sulks and turns away from us while I finish telling my story to Trub. Vic listens closely, but doesn't say a word. When I reach the end, Trub strokes his bushy beard and thinks for a moment. So there are two things we have to do. Deliver the dragons and find Ma. Which one do you want to do first? Find Ma, I said without hesitation. When I left her, she was in trouble. Oh, Ma's got a nose for trouble, he says with a chuckle. That's how she found me, of course. There are different kinds of trouble, but what's Ma up against this time? A dinosaur, I think. Vic grabs his arm. A real dinosaur? I understand Vic's excitement, but this isn't a story I'm proud to share. Well, there was something moving in the jungle, following us, and then, just as it was about to attack, Mom sent me back, alone. I don't suppose you two figured out where you were in time, Trub asked doubtfully. I think back to what Mom said when she checked her compass. Ma thought it was a Mesozoic era. Triassic period? Vic asks. Jurassic, maybe. What kind of creatures did you see? Trub asks. I wasn't trying to get up close and personal with anything in that world, but there was pterodon flying in the sky, I tell him. They lived from late Triassic to the Cretaceous period. Though technically, they're not dinosaurs. Kavita says it's in a know-it-all sort of way. They're flying lizards, Vilk explains. Lizards? I think for a moment and then slip off my book bag. I pull out L. Roy Massive's book to show it to Trub. Ma loaned this to me, and the man who wrote it is the one who sent the dragons from Madagascar. Trub takes a look at the book from me and opens it up. L. Ron Jenkins. I haven't heard that name in quite a while. Thought he was in Australia, not Africa. Vic checks his watch and stands up. I wish I could stick around, Jax, but it's almost time for dinner. I think we'd better head home. Is there anything else you need? Just one more thing, Vic. How long did pterodon stick around before they were extinct? Over 100 million years, Kavita replies, even though I wasn't asking her. Anything else? I check with Trub, who shakes his head. Thanks for coming out, Vic, I said. Anytime, Jax, he replies. I hope you find your Ma. Let's go, Kavita. Vic's little sister gets up from the bench and reluctantly hands over Ma's purse. Vic nudges her and says, Kavita wants to tell you something, Jax. I look at her for a long time, but she doesn't say a word. Vic nudges her again, harder this time. Kavita sighs and looks at her shoes. I'm sorry about what happened before. she says quietly. I feel kind of bad for yelling at her, so I say, don't worry about it. And thanks for sharing your snack with all of us. Kavita smiles at me and then takes her brother's hand. I watch as they walk down the block, the fabric plates on Kavita's dinosaur bag flapping in the breeze. I figured Trouble and I would get back to the transporter, but he surprises me by asking, you hungry? I haven't had anything to eat since choking down that peanut butter sandwich that Mom made for us this morning. I want to say yes, but it feels wrong to put my stomach before Mom. Yeah, but shouldn't we get back to Ma? I ask uneasily. Trouble puts his hand on my shoulder and looks me squarely in the eye. Ma's gonna be all right, son. I know this business is new and strange to you, but I've been doing it off and on for 20 years, and if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that Ma can take care of herself. I think back to the moment in the jungle when Ma pointed her cane at the guardhouse. Before the door closed, Ma's eyes were locked on mine. Even with a wild creature charging toward her, Ma didn't look afraid. Ambrose thinks Ma sent me back on purpose, I tell Trub. Of course she did, he replies. Ma ain't perfect, but she also don't make no mistakes, if you know what I mean. But I didn't. But I nodded anyway, and Trub went on. Could be she sent you back for a reason. Maybe to meet me, Trub laughs. And his gold tooth catches the sun, which is strange. It was finally starting to come out. One thing I know for sure. We can't work on an empty stomach. Let's grab a burger to go, Trouble says. We can even eat on the way if you like. I imagine myself trying to eat while swooping and swerving inside the transporter. Then I picture myself puking all over Trub in a cramped guardhouse. Oh, maybe we should eat first, I suggest. Trouble nods and steers me up the block with a hand still on my shoulder. Ma doesn't usually let us eat fast food, but there's a burger joint right across the street, and that's where we're heading. I walk alongside Trub, wanting to ask a dozen questions, but not knowing where to start. Ambrose says we're related, I say shyly as we wait for the white light to change. Well, that's right, Trouble says with his gold tooth smile. I wanted to do this for years. Do what? I said. Take my grandson for a burger. The light changes, but I don't step off the curb. Instead, I turn to take a closer look at Trub. There's definitely a strong resemblance, but if he really is my grandfather, why hasn't Mama ever mentioned him to me? After my daddy died, Mama made it seem like it was just the two of us against the world. And I liked it that way because I knew I could count on her to be there for me. I always figured Mama was such a good mother because her own parents weren't there for her when she was my age. If she couldn't count on her father back then, how could I trust him now? Trub watches me as if he can see all the questions swirling in my mind. He smiles and gives my shoulder another squeeze. I sure am glad to see you, son. Though I wish we could have met under different circumstances. You probably got a lot of questions for me. So how about we get some grub and then start catching up? That sounds like a reasonable plan. So I save my questions until we're back at the stone bench in front of the guardhouse eating greasy burgers and fries. So where have you been? I mean, Mama never told me I had a grandfather living in Brooklyn. Trub takes a long sip of soda and then rattles the ice left in the cup. Well, I can't say I could blame her. I've been in and out of the city for the past 20 years, a rolling stone if you know what that means. I don't. But I solved the riddle myself instead of asking Trub for an explanation. Stones don't usually roll, so I figured Trub must mean that he wasn't around much when Mama was young. I pretty much knew that already, so I move on to my next question. Are you a witch or a warlock? Trub shakes his head and brushes crumbs out of his beard. I had had no particular kind of training, nothing formal at least. And no training means no title. but that don't bother me. I just help whenever and wherever I can. Ma, she calls me Trouble Man, or Trub for short. Is that short? Is that 'cause you get into a lot of trouble? I ask. Trub doesn't answer right away. He balls up the foil wrapper from his burger and shoves it inside the grease-stained paper bag that's between us on the bench. Well, Jax, he finally says, sometimes I find trouble and sometimes trouble finds me. I expect Trub to smile or wink at me like he usually does, but this time my grandfather just sighs. There's a song by the same name. Don't suppose you've heard it. It came out long before your time. How long ago? How's it go? Trub crumbles up the bag of trash and aims for the garbage can a few feet away. He makes a shot, but Trub doesn't smile. It's by a great musician named Marvin Gaye. He was very talented, but also very troubled. It's his song, he says. There's only 3 things, that's for sure: tax, death, and trouble. I suck the last of my soda through the straw. Then I burp, and I say, that sounds like a real depressing song. Trub smiles. It's got a good beat. You like jazz? I shrug. I think my daddy used to listen to jazz records, but Mama doesn't play them anymore. Trub says, one of these days, I'll play that song for you. It might sound depressing, but really, it's about not letting life get you down. I nod and gathered up what's left of my meal. My aim's not that great, so I carried it over to the trash can. But before I get there, the biggest rat that I'd ever see scurries across my path. I holler and I jump back. The rat's heading straight for Trub, but he doesn't seem concerned. In fact, he pats the spot next to where I was sitting on the bench and grins when the rat hops up and puts his front paws on his leg. There's plenty of rats in Brooklyn. They're dirty and nasty and carry disease. Remember the plague? So I definitely keep my distance. I'm expecting this giant rat to take a giant bite out of my grandfather's leg, but instead he says, "Hi, Trub. Got any grub?" "Oh, you're too late, Nate. Grub's gone." "Where have you been?" So here's the picture. The rat puts one paw on his hip and then, like he's ready to tell Grub a long story, until he sees me, or rather the uneaten food in my hands. "Hey, kid," the rat calls out. "You could eat that?" I shake my head and set my leftovers on the ground. I barely have time to put my hand away before Nate hops off the bench and starts devouring my cold fries. When a hungry pigeon tries to steal a bit of hamburger bun smeared with ketchup, Nate rushes at the poor bird and sends it squawking. I slip back onto the bench and ask, "Friend of yours?" Trub nods and says, "Me and Nate go way back. He's no ordinary cat, nor no ordinary rat." I watch the rat greedily gobbling down my leftovers and try to see what makes Nate so special. Trub can tell I'm not impressed. "Nate got a nose for like no other," he explains. "All rats can sniff out food, but Nate," Trub pauses to beam at his rodent friend, "Nate's got a nose for magic." Magic has a smell? Nate stops eating and looks at me over his shoulder. "Everything has a smell, kid. Magic, joy, fear, regret. All of it can be detected if you got the right nose." He taps his snout with a claw, then rising up with his haunches to sniff the air. "What do you smell, Nate?" Trub asks. The rat turns away from us and sniffs again. Strange. There's a trace of envy in the air, and something else. Nate sniffs away again and then looks at us. "I smell a thief," he says in a grave voice. I tighten my hold on Ma's purse and glance around nervously. Trub frowns. "Close by?" he asks. Nate shakes his head and strokes his whiskers. Long gone. Then he grins and rubs his paws together. But I do love a challenge. Gotta run, Trub. Thanks for dinner, kid. Nate scurries over to the curb and disappears inside a sewer. Can you really smell a thief down there? I ask Trub. He nods and gets to his feet. I pick up my trash off the ground and place it in the can. When I turn around, Trub surprises me by saying, when Nate said he could smell regret, he was talking about me. Oh, what do you regret? I ask. So many things, Trub said, slowly shaking his head. I sure was sorry to hear about your daddy, Jax. My cheeks start to burn, and suddenly I want nothing more than to be squeezed inside the dark guardhouse, hurtling toward time. I stand before Trub, and my eyes glued on the ground. He reaches out a hand and gently runs his thumb along my eyebrows, the way Ma does sometimes. I look at my grandfather and said, how did you find out? I may not be around all the time, but I've always kept tabs of you and your mama. You weren't at the funeral, I say softly, hoping to hide my accusation in my heart. I was there, he said. But I thought it was best for me to keep a low profile. A funeral isn't a place really the right time for a family reunion. And the last time we talked, your mama made it clear that she didn't want me interfering in her life. Mama said that? Trub nods. That was over 10 years ago, before you were born. Can't say I blame her. You see, I couldn't always find steady work when your mama was a little girl, and that meant she had to go without some things sometimes. Plus, I had some buddies who were kind of shady, and I got mixed up in some of their mess. But when Ma introduced me to the realm of magic, everything changed. For the first time in my life, I really felt like I belonged. I felt useful again. Mama believed in me, and that made it easy to believe in myself. I thought I could just wrap the world up in a rainbow and give it to Alicia. But she didn't want no part of me, no part of it or me after that. If you knew Mama didn't like magic, why did you leave her with Ma? I didn't, but my wife, your granny, she got the wrong end of the stick when it came to me and Ma, and so she dropped Alicia right off in the middle of it. Some folks fear magic, Jax, black magic especially, but in the other realm, there's no black or white. There's less fear and more wonder. Trub smiles to himself. I thought my little girl could be like the girl in that book, Alicia in Wonderland, but I was wrong. My baby girl didn't see all the beauty, just the strangeness. I feel like Trub's talking in riddles again. This time I ask for help. Wait a minute. Are you saying you took Mama to another dimension when she was a little girl? Trub nods. Well, just once. But once was all it took. She took a look around, shut her eyes as tight as she could, and demanded that I take her back home. I can't wait to see the realm of magic. At least I'm curious about what it's like. It's hard to imagine my brave mother being so scared. But then I remembered how terrified I was when Ma accidentally took me to the land of dinosaurs. If the magical realm has dragons, then Mama felt the same way. Trub looks pretty miserable, so I try to think of something that would make him feel a little bit better. Ma says Mama just wants to be ordinary, I tell Trub. He nods, as if that makes sense. Maybe so. What about you, Jax? What do you want? I think for a moment. Does Trub know that Mama and I are about to lose our home? Would he approve if I told him I wanted to become Ma's apprentice? I don't know the answers to those questions, So I just say, I want to find Ma and make sure she's okay. And then I want to help her deliver the dragons. Trub claps his hands together and gets up from the bench. Then, that's what we better do. You ready to go? I nod, and I hold Ma's purse close to my chest. It feels lighter than before, but then I remember what's missing. I don't have Ma's compass. I told Trub. She had it with her when we got separated. Well, that's good. She'll need it to find her way around, he said. Trub reaches into his pants pockets and pulls out a silver watch. I got my own, so if you got the dragons, we're all set. We're missing something else. I scan the street for a scruffy homeless man pushing an overflowing grocery cart. Don't we need Ambrose to open the door, I ask? Trub winks at me, and his gold tooth flashes between his smiling lips. As it happened, picking locks is one of my specialties.